Good morning. This is Randy Kirk. And while I don't normally follow news events with a quick episode, this particular news event is right in my wheelhouse. So I figured that this would be a great time to come out with a quick one. Well, this one won't be so quick. It's going to be kind of long, and we're going to kind of go in the weeds. But for a lot of you, this might be really useful information for your business. Could be useful information for your company, or just could be useful information as somebody who's an investor who follows stocks. We're going to be talking about pricing. I am something of an expert on pricing. I started my career 100 years ago with a company that was importing padlocks from Germany, a company by the name of ABUS, A-B-U-S. And we were fighting against a major competitor, Master. And when I started with this small company, I was just an employee. When I started with them, they were selling about 3 markets. And not by any brilliance or any intelligence or anything else on my part, I just started looking for additional markets that this product might be sold in, because padlocks, let's face it, you know, there's newspaper racks and there's mini storage and there's all kinds of, it just hardware stores and locksmiths and bike shops and motorcycle stores, and it just goes on and on. I ended up putting the padlocks into about 25 different markets, having started with 3. Well, right away, one of the first things you're going to find out when you enter in a new market is that their pricing might be completely different than some other market. So there might be one or more distributors in between. You might be selling to a distributor who sells to a dealer who sells to a consumer. I eventually got involved in foreign markets, and it turns out in some of those cases, you've got an importer who sells to a distributor, they call it, who sells to a dealer, who sells to the consumer. So you have all these layers, and you have to figure in the margins for each of these layers in order to figure out what your retail is going to be and what each of the prices are going to be. And then you have to create price sheets specific to that industry. So as you can see, way back when, before the internet, almost before computers, I was figuring out pricing in order to A, understand the market, meet the market where they needed to be with regard to pricing, but also to take into consideration the profits of the company and what it would take to make a living. Well, fast forward about that 100 years, and 4 years ago, I put together this massive website that had about 85 different pages on it that went into various aspects of running a small business. And one of those was on pricing. And I was shocked that the #1 page, the page that everybody went to immediately, was the page on pricing. I had never realized, even in all this years of consulting with small companies and running my own companies, that most small business people are very confused by, don't know how to price. And so right now we're dealing with Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk knows a ton about pricing, and I'm going to try to dig into it. I don't know. I'm not inside Elon's brain, but I certainly have studied him a lot. I've just finished reading the book about PayPal, the founders, and I'll be doing an interview with the guy who wrote the book, Jimmy Sunny. In that book, they talk a lot about pricing. In this particular case, how much were they going to charge people for PayPal? Well, it started out 0. It cost you nothing as a business or as a consumer, nothing. Later on, they experimented with little pricing strategies here and there. And eventually, that's how they made their money, was by being able to charge businesses for transactions. So pricing is a very complex and a very difficult thing. I'm just going to touch on the top layer of that. I'm not going to go into a huge, long MBA dissertation, but basically the first part about pricing is you need to make money. Now, Elon says this year he's okay not to make money. That's a strategic decision. But in general, if a company's not making money, you're out of business. Everybody goes home. So what do you need to make? How much do you need to make in order to make a living? And it turns out that, say, for instance, in retail, your margins are usually going to have to be between an absolute minimum of 35%. Sometimes your margins, say on something that you only pay $1 for, might be more than 50%. You might be more than doubling. You might be buying something for 50 cents and selling it for $2. And this is going to have to do with, if you need those kind of margins, it's usually because the handling of something for 50 cents takes just as long as handling something that costs $10. So you have to have more margins because you have a higher ratio in terms of the cost of handling it. So these kinds of things over the years in most industries have kind of been determined. There's kind of a general feeling of what the margins need to be based on what everybody else has been doing over the years, because the markets will tend to throw out those who are not competent to price. Those who price too high or those who price too low will eventually be out of business. And so then the general levels of pricing necessary in that industry will have been determined by the market. Well, okay, that's number one is, what do you need to do to stay in business? But number two is, what is the competition doing? So you're always needing to at least be aware of what the competitive pricing is in the marketplace, as well as, related to that, the consumer's willingness to pay. And that's all over the board, because sometimes there's a real opportunity to come in low. That there's nobody in the lower part of the market, and so you can come in low, and as long as you've got enough margins to survive, then you come in low and you buy some market share. Maybe you buy market share for a year or two or three, and then you raise your prices in the future in order to now start to make money. But then there's other situations. I had a product one time that we were at $9.95. One of our retailers decided, a major retailer, a drugstore chain, decided to sell it for $12.95, and the sales went crazy because this was a padlock, and people thought, oh, I'm going to pay more for something that I think is secure. So it was a psychological thing where they were happy to pay more than they were to pay less because they thought they were getting a better value. So there's all these kinds of things that go on. There's emotional things on the part of the consumer. There's these layers of distribution. There's elements of strategy. Well, all those things are coming into play right now, all of them. Okay, so let's go down the list very quickly here. Number one, I believe that Elon Musk is sending a message. A couple of days ago, I put out a couple of videos, and I said in those videos that I didn't think that Elon was going to cut prices. I was wrong. I was thinking primarily in terms of the long-term nature of what might be happening in this recessionary year. And I said I would, if I was in that particular place, I would do a lot of marketing things, whether that's advertising, whether that was promotions, whether that was creating some folks to, like, for instance, I even suggested there might be product placements on movies and things of that nature. A whole long list. You can go and look at the video if you like. So those, I think, are great strategies. I still think they're great ideas. I still think that Tesla should and probably will do these things in order to generate more market in this year, get more people interested, more people looking at Tesla because of things like safety that many of them don't know. But I think that the reason I was wrong is that Elon Musk right now is sending a statement, and he's sending a statement to about 4 different groups. I think the number one group that he's sending this statement to is his competitors, and I divide that into 3. Number one, he's sending a message to BYD. BYD, you are operating at very, very low margins. Yes, you have the Chinese government behind you. Yes, you can get away with that for a long time and then raise your prices later. But we have huge margins. We have pricing power because of our margins and because of our brand and because people think that we're amazing, and we are amazing, and we can prove it on so many levels. And so we are going to use this pricing power right now, and we're going to just let you know that we're willing to come down as much as necessary in order to make sure that we sell every single car. And this will be a message that won't be forgotten in future years. When things are not as economically troubling as it is right now in China, BYD will remember that Tesla's not going to play around. They're going to go for the jugular as necessary. So we'll see what the response is from BYD. They don't have the pricing power to lower the price of their cars, but Tesla does. And by lowering the price of their cars, they're going to increase the number of people that are interested and capable of buying the car. And that sends a message to BYD. Number 2, they're sending a message to the legacy sellers, the legacy manufacturers who are active in China. Those folks are not making any money at all right now. They are losing a ton of money, and they need more time to ramp to get up there where they can really compete. And I think Tesla is saying to them, we have the pricing power to make sure we sell every car. So it's the same message, but it's slightly different, and that these guys have even less pricing power than BYD. So they may have to really consider the idea that they're going to sell less cars this year. Some of them may back out of the market, just not even sell in China in 2023. They may pull back and start to look at other possibilities of how they might place their cars in terms of the hierarchy of pricing. They may want to change some of the models to address the situation. So there's all kinds of things they might do. And that leaves the third group of competitors, and those would be the startups in China. There's hundreds of these startups. I think in a recessionary year, those folks are in the biggest trouble. Some of them are going to go by the wayside and deserve to. And this pricing effort by Tesla may cause some of them to go away quicker. And that allows Tesla to meet the demand that they need to create the demand that they need this year in order to sell every car they can make. It'll be interesting to see what they do in other foreign markets. Again, I said the other day, I don't think they're going to need to lower the price in these markets that they are shipping from Shanghai to serve. I still don't think they need to lower their prices in order to do that. But again, they may have some strategic reasons for, let's say, lowering them in Australia, where they've just shipped a ton of cars. I think the addressable market in Australia is still massive, and I don't think they need to do that, but maybe they want to sell just a lot more cars, and they think that by dropping the price 5% or 10% in Australia, that might mean they can sell a huge number of these Shanghai-produced cars in this coming year. Japan, third largest auto market in the world. They're not even hardly in Japan at this point. They're selling hardly any cars in Japan. I don't think they need to lower the price, but I do think they need to do something. There's some kind of a marketing move they need to make in Japan in order to jumpstart what's happening in Japan, because Japan alone could suck up a huge percentage of the cars that may not be easy to sell in China this year. So these would be strategic pricing choices. And these are making statements in certain markets to competitors, to consumers. And then the other person making a statement to, I think in China, is the Chinese Communist Party, to the Chinese government, not just at the national level, but at the regional level. They stopped 100% of these subsidies that they were providing. And the subsidies were helping Tesla, but they were helping their competitors too. And the competitors not having this subsidy is going to be harder on them, I think, than it is on Tesla. And I think Tesla is sending a message saying, you've made a mistake by eliminating the subsidies. I think Tesla believes that they'd like to have BYD stay in the game. I don't think there's any question BYD will stay in the game. I think there's a couple of other players in China that should stay in the game, and I think Tesla has that same opinion. But I think Tesla is saying to China, eliminating the subsidies in going into a recessionary year, not such a great idea. All right. Let's see. Oh, yes. This is a big one. I think that they've already lowered their cost of doing business this year anyway, in terms of the cost of goods. I think that Elon has already said that a lot of the commodity prices on the raw materials have already come down. They've been making great strides in Shanghai in terms of improving the cost of labor and other things. You know, as they've ramped up, the more you ramp, the more cars you're making, the less they cost. We already know that formula. So I think that maybe they've got even more pricing power than we think. Remember, they also raised prices a ton over the last 2 years. So it may be that they have gone way out here, and now they have really a lot of room to be able to lower these costs without digging too deeply into profits. I wouldn't be unhappy at all as a stockholder, as a shareholder, if they were only making 20% on their cars out of Shanghai. In China, not in the foreign markets. I'd like to keep those up around 30% if possible. But in the Chinese market, maybe they can only make 20% this year. That would be fine. Now, there's also, you'll notice the strategic pricing with regard to the individual makes and models. The individual models. So they lowered the price 6% on one, 10% on a couple, 13, 14, 15. So they've done different things with different cars. Now, this is because they got their ear to the ground in China, just like they do everywhere. This is one of the brilliant parts of Tesla. They are very aware of the customer, what the customer is doing, what the customer is willing to pay. So I think that they're paying close attention. And so these price cuts are very strategically designed to make sure that they're at the price they need to be to get the numbers they want to get. Okay, next, I think that these price cuts now could be a ramp that they need right now to get to the next cars. So we already know that the Highland is coming. We're not 100% sure what the Highland is, but in Shanghai, that might mean that this is the die-cast front, die-cast rear, the much more efficient, much more cost-effective way to make cars. So maybe they need to lower the cost now because of the recessionary environment. And maybe the Highland is coming out in 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. And so in the next few months, we'll see the Highland hit, and that will be maybe a $30,000 car in China. And that will give another ramp. That'll give us another few months at that lower price car until the third car, the next project 3, I think they're calling it. So that would be the car that is going to take up half the space to manufacture, is going to take half the labor to put together, half the time to put together, and therefore, assumedly, cost them roughly half to manufacture, maybe a little more than half. That would be then the $25,000 or even $20,000, who knows? At this point, we don't know exactly what they're shooting for, but that car would be then the 2024. Maybe they're going to push that forward. There's no doubt that they've already been designing this car. This car is probably 99% ready to go, but it's a matter of then putting in the equipment and the line and then ramping up in 2024. Maybe sooner. Maybe they'll decide to really push that. Anyway, this is, and then one thing I want to address, there was some confusion on Twitter. I just want to make clear, Tesla is going to be doing all of these things by market, by product, and they're going to move quickly. Elon Musk changes prices more often than I change my socks. He showed that when he was at PayPal. He was totally willing to change the price. If the market reacted positively or negatively, he was ready to change it again. He's shown it already in Tesla over the last few years, always changing prices based on what's happening on the ground. So this price decreases could last a month. They could last 2 weeks. If he starts to see the order book getting filled up in China and in these export markets that he's shipping to, he could raise the price back up again by the same amount or by some different amount. So don't think that these prices are forever. These are also strategic by market, by model, by specific, maybe even sometimes they might sell it on one side of China for one thing and on the other side of China for something else. And the margins of the cars that are made in China are going to be different than the same thing in Europe, the same thing in the United States. The cost of making it in Fremont is different. So that has to be taken into consideration on cars that are sold in the United States. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover here with regard to pricing. This is a sophisticated aspect of how to run a business. I trust Elon 100%. What I just say? I trust Elon 100% to get it right most of the time. And if he doesn't get it right, to fail and fail forward. So this may be a failure. This could be a huge mistake, but then he'll fail forward as he always does, as quickly as it's determined that they needed to lower the prices more or they lowered them too much. So watch carefully. This is going to be truly, watching Elon Musk is truly the MBA course in pricing. If you've liked this content, you'd like to see more, subscribe. We've got these interviews coming up. I spent 2.5 hours yesterday interviewing Brian Wong, and I think you're going to just find those interviews to be incredible. So go ahead and subscribe, ask for a notification, please join Patreon. We're having a lot of fun. I'm going to do a video right now. As soon as I'm done with this one, I'm going to work on a video that I'm going to do about the Patreon and what is going to happen on Patreon. So great talking to you.